The truck is rapidly picking up speed. How superbly it climbs the grade. A series of 4D engines that began the new age of high-power engines is now enlarging its family with the newly developed 4D34 diesel engine. The 4D34 diesel engine, which has a strong torque at normal speeds, smoothly starts and speeds up the vehicle in addition to its durability at high-speed operation. And its low operation noise and drivability are very attractive. The 4D34 diesel engine, unrivaled in its economization, fully demonstrates its high power and high response performance during operation. Proper service is important and indispensable for extended operation of the 4D34 diesel engine in its original performance condition. Presently, this engine is mounted on the small-sized truck Canter and the small-sized bus Rosa. Let's begin to study the main points in overhauling the 4D34 diesel engine. Before overhauling an engine, it is suggested that you confirm that something is wrong by referring to the service record, as well as to check the compression pressure, oil pressure, and as many other items as possible. Such data will help you in overhauling and reassembling the engine. For properly carrying out the service work, use of such special tools as appearing on the screen are recommended. For efficient and quick service of the engine, it is recommended that it be mounted on a rotary stand after draining the engine oil and coolant. Well, let's start service work with disassembling. The impeller of the water pump cannot be disassembled since it is made of resinous material. When something is wrong with the water pump, for example, coolant leakage, replace the entire water pump assembly. As soon as the injection pump is removed, cover every open port of the fuel injection pump so as to prevent debris from entering the pump. To remove the cylinder head bolts, first loosen the outer ones, next loosen the inner ones, and then remove all bolts. Next, let's remove the flywheel. Before removal, fix the flywheel by using a cut piece of disused flywheel's ring gear. And loosen the locking nut of the crank pulley. For the type employing a taper cone, use the taper cone puller of a special tool. Loosen and remove all bolts except one, which is left in place. But this bolt should be loosened halfway. When the flywheel is removable, completely loosen the remaining bolt and remove the flywheel. After removal of the rear oil seal, rear plate, and the timing gear case, measure backlash and end play of each timing gear and record the data. When the results exceed the limit, replace all related parts. To remove the idler shaft, use the reverse gear shaft puller of a special tool. Remove 2 retaining bolts of the thrust plate. When removing the camshaft from the crankcase, be careful not to damage the camshaft bushing. Measure and record the respective piston projections at the top dead center. Measure and record the end play of respective connecting rods. When this measurement result exceeds the limit, replace the connecting rod. Measure and record the end play of the crankshaft. When the measurement result exceeds the limit, replace the thrust plate with a properly oversized one. To remove the main bearing caps number 1 and number 5, use the bearing cap extractor of a special tool. For removing the valve cutters, use the valve lifter of a special tool. If there is anything abnormally worn or damaged found during visual inspection, write it down for replacement. It is advisable to put the valve springs, valves and so on in order by cylinder for easy reassembly. To prevent the removed parts from getting dust, prepare a vinyl sheet or the like and clean them. Thoroughly clean the oil holes in particular. Next, inspect the main parts. In order to preserve the original performance, there are nominal values and limits established for the parts. Therefore, it is important to make sure of the quality of the respective parts by measurement. Measure the clearance between the camshaft and the camshaft bushing. When it exceeds the limit, replace the camshaft bushing. Measure the bend of the camshaft. If it exceeds the limit, then correct the bend or replace the camshaft. The bend is given by half of the value that of the indicator deflection. Measure the difference between the lobe height and the base circle diameter of the cam. When it exceeds the limit, replace the camshaft. Measure the clearance between the piston and the cylinder sleeve. When the clearance exceeds the nominal value, rebore the cylinder sleeve to next oversize. In this case, it is necessary to rebore all other cylinder sleeves to the same oversize. Pistons are available in 0.5 and 1.0 mm oversizes in addition to the standard size. Measure the oil clearance of the main bearing. To measure the inside diameter of the bearing, do it in the condition that the main bearing and the main bearing cap are tightened as specified. Additionally, measure the free span of the bearing. If any result of these measurements exceeds the limit, replace the bearing. Measure the oil clearance and the free span of the connecting rod bearing in the same manner as done previously mentioned. Measure the bend of the crankshaft. If it exceeds the limit, then correct the bend by a press or replace the crankshaft. When the end play of the crankshaft exceeds the limit, inspect the thickness of the thrust plates, which are installed in the respective rear ends of the number 5 bearing cap and the crankcase, and replace them with oversized ones. The oversized thrust plates are available in 3 different sizes, namely 0.15 mm, 0.3 mm, and 0.45 mm. Use the connecting rod aligner to measure the bend and distortion of the connecting rod. Measure the clearance between the piston pin and the small end bushing. If the clearance exceeds the limit, replace the bushing. Measure the clearance between the piston ring and the piston ring groove. Put the piston ring inside the cylinder sleeve and measure the end gap of the piston ring. If it exceeds the limit, replace the piston rings as a set. Measure the distortion of the upper surface of the crankcase. Inspect the friction surface of the flywheel. Put the flywheel on the surface plate and move a dial gauge in the radial direction to read deflection of the pointer. If it exceeds the limit, grind the friction surface. Measure the clearance between the idler shaft and idler gear bushing. If it exceeds the limit, replace the bushing. Next is the inspection of the cylinder head and the valve mechanism. Measure distortion of the cylinder head bottom surface If it exceeds the limit, correct it with a surface grinder. When the cylinder head height reaches the service limit, it is necessary to replace the cylinder head. Check the press-in condition of the water director at this time. Measure the clearance between the rocker shaft and the rocker arm bushing. Measure the clearance between the valve stem and the valve guide. When the outer diameter of the valve stem reaches the service limit, replace the valve. Measure the bend of the push rod. Measure the clearance between the tappet and the tappet installation hole. Measure the free length, inclination, and installation load of the valve spring. For inspecting the oil pump, proceed to check clearance between the pump case and respective gears at first. Then check difference between the gear height and the depth of the oil pump case. And finally, measure the clearance between the driven gear and the shaft. To check for leakage in the water passage of the oil cooler, apply a maximum compressed air of 3 kilograms per square centimeter. To check for leakage in the oil passage, apply a maximum compressed air of 15 kilograms per square centimeter. For inspection of the oil cooler bypass valve, measure the installation load of the valve spring with a spring tester. When reassembling the oil cooler, make sure to match the markings of the shell and the element with each other. For inspection of the thermostat, proceed. At first, to confirm that the valve is completely closed under 65 degrees Celsius of water temperature. Then confirm the valve opens at the specified temperature as the water temperature rises. And finally, confirm that the valve lifts up more than 10 millimeters when the water temperature is raised to 95 degrees Celsius. The next step is to inspect the injection nozzle. When there is carbon adhesion in and around the nozzle holes, soak it in light oil and remove the carbon with wood chips. Then clean the nozzle holes with the nozzle cleaning tool. At first, confirm the injection pressure whether it meets the standard or not. Set the nozzle on a nozzle tester and operate it at a speed of 60 strokes a minute to read an indicated value. When it is not the specified value, namely 180 kilograms per square centimeter, take the injection nozzle apart and adjust the injection pressure by changing the thickness of the washer. At the same time, check the spray pattern. For oil tight test, gradually raise the fuel pressure by the nozzle tester until it reaches 20 kilograms per square centimeter lower than the specified injection starting pressure. Keeping this pressure, inspect whether fuel leaks from the lower part of the nozzle or not. If there is anything wrong detected by the inspections, take the injection nozzle apart and replace the nozzle. Soak this nozzle in light oil for cleaning. If the needle valve doesn't slide smoothly after cleaning, replace the nozzle. Next, you are going to learn the repairing manner of the main engine parts. When the cylinder sleeve is not reusable by boring, replace it with a new one. For replacement details, read the service manual. When the cylinder sleeve needs to be rebored, ask machine shop to do it. Keep it in mind that pistons having the same size should be used for engines. When replacing the camshaft bushing, always use the special tool. Pull the sealing cap out of the rear end of the crankcase. Use the camshaft bushing installer and extractor, a special tool, for pulling out the camshaft bushing. When installing the bushing, make sure of the setting position referring to the identification markings on the bushing and align the oil holes. Finally, press the sealing cap into the crankcase. For processing the crankshaft to be undersized, precision work is required, as you can see. In such a case, ask a machine shop to do it. When a crank pin needs to be undersized owing to seizure, make sure that all other crank pins are the same undersize. To remove and install the small end bushing of the connecting rod, use the connecting rod bushing puller kit of the special tool. When replacing the bushing, align with the oil holes. If the clearance between the piston pin and the bushing is under the nominal value, ream the bushing for finishing. Set the piston rings on the piston with the manufacturer's mark upside and position respective gaps as shown by the picture. To set the idler gear bushing, use the idler gear bushing puller to match the bushing's oil hole with that of the idler gear. After the bushing is pressed in, measure the clearance between the idler shaft and the bushing. If it is under the nominal value, process the bushing by reaming. Use the rocker bushing puller of a special tool to replace the rock arm bushing. To push the bushing in first, align the oil holes, then press it in from the shaft side with its clinch facing the adjusting screw. Next, the cylinder head and related parts. To replace the valve guide, pull it out with the valve guide remover. And push in a new valve guide with the valve guide installer. To correct the valve face, grind it by a valve refacer. To correct the valve seat, use a valve seat grinder or a valve seat cutter. At that time, the valve seat angle must be 45 degrees. For valve lapping, slightly and evenly apply compound, having a small amount of engine oil, onto the valve contact surface. Use lapping compound of number 120 to 150 meshes in the first stage, and use number 200 of finer meshes for finishing. Slowly rotate the valve lapper while tapping the valve lightly to the valve seat. After lapping, wash the compound away with light oil. Next, apply engine oil onto the contact surface for proper seating. And push the valve to the valve seat on which red lead is applied to check the seating condition of the valve. Uniform contact, as shown in the picture, is favorable. Confirm that the valve seat width, the valve sinkage, and the valve margin are all within the allowance. Use the valve stem seal installer, a special tool to install the valve stem seal. At that time, apply engine oil to the seal slip. The next step illustrates the main points when reassembling the engine. An important thing is to clean all parts thoroughly. Apply engine oil to moving sections to be lubricated by lubricating oil. Pay close attention to the respective positions of oil holes of the bearing and so on. Observe specified installation order and tightening torque. Replace gaskets, packings, O-rings, oil seals, split pins and so forth with new ones respectively. First, install the main moving parts to the crankcase. Apply sealant to the crankcase surface to which number 1 and number 5 main bearing caps will be installed. Three kinds of oversized thrust plates are available. Choose a proper one so that the end play of the crankshaft meets the nominal value. Use thrust plates which are the same thickness for the rear end of the crankcase and the rear end of the bearing cap. When inserting the side seal, confirm its installation direction and make sure to apply sealant. Tighten the main bearing cap by the specified torque. Then confirm that the crankshaft smoothly rotates. And its end play meets the nominal value. Set the piston and the connecting rod assembly in the crankcase by using a piston guide. At this time, confirm that the lug of the upper bearing is securely inserted into the connecting rod, and the markings of the piston and the connecting rod are positioned in the front of the engine. Tighten the connecting rod cap by the specified torque. Then confirm the end play as specified. Check that the projection of the piston is correct. Careful inspection of it is particularly required after the upper surface of the crankcase has been grinded. When installing the camshaft to the crankcase, be most careful not to damage the camshaft bushing. When installing the timing gears, match the respective markings with each other and confirm that the end play and the backlash meet the nominal value. Install the rear oil seal within 3 minutes after applying sealant. When installing the oil seal kit composed of a sleeve and an oversized oil seal, push it in with oil seal and sleeve installer of a special tool. At this time, make sure to apply engine oil to the inside of the sleeve and to the lip of oil seal. Tighten the flywheel by the specified torque. Then check run out of the flywheel. Apply wheel bearing grease to the lip of the front oil seal without fail. Tighten the crank pulley lock nut by the specified torque. Set the valve spring with a small pitched side facing the cylinder head. When installing a new cylinder head gasket, position it with the up mark upside on the top of the crankcase for correct positioning. At first, temporarily tighten the cylinder head bolts in such an order as you find in the screen. And securely tighten them by the specified torque. For installing the injection pump, first set the number 1 cylinder piston to the top dead center on the compression stroke. Next, match the marking of the timer case with the notch of the injection pump gear. Align the guide bar of the timer case with the guide hole of the front plate. Then push the injection pump into the gear case. Confirm the timer case marking and the notch of the injection pump gear are thoroughly matched with each other, just before the idler gear and the injection pump gear become engaged perfectly. Tighten the 5 bolts to secure them. Install the injection pump stay, oil pipe, and fuel pipe. Adjustment of the valve clearance should be done when the engine is cold. According to the indication, adjust the respective valve clearance with number 1, and number 4 cylinder pistons positioned at the top dead center on the compression stroke. The nominal value is 0.4 millimeters for both of the intake and exhaust valves. Securely tighten the lock nuts after the adjustment. Before starting the engine, make sure to check the tension of the fan belt, engine oil, coolant, arrangement of wirings, pipes and hoses and so on before proceeding to the following step, that is, the timing of fuel injection. Operate the priming pump to bleed the fuel system. Next, remove the delivery valve spring, stopper, and delivery valve from the number 1 cylinder of the injection pump, and return the delivery valve holder to the original position and tighten it by the specified torque. Install a test pipe for number 1 high pressure pipe. Crank the engine in the normal direction to position the number 1 cylinder piston at 30 degrees before the top dead center on the compression stroke. Operate the priming pump again and observe the fuel flowing through the test pipe when the stop lever of the governor is free, namely when the starter switch is turned to on position. When operating the priming pump, slowly turn the engine in the normal direction until fuel from the test pipe completely stops. Stop turning at that moment and determine the injection timing from the crank angle indicated by the pointer. If the pointer under the timer case indicates 11 degrees before the top dead center, it is the correct value. As have been seen, the injection timing can be adjusted by moving the setting positions of the timer and the injection pump slightly. During trial operation of the engine, carefully check for leakage of water and oil, abnormal noise and so on, and measure and record the oil pressure and the compression pressure of the engine. Measurement of the engine oil pressure should be done when the engine is idling and at maximum speed of revolution when the oil temperature is 70 to 90 degrees Celsius. The nominal value while idling is 1.5 kilograms per square centimeter, and that during the maximum speed of revolution is 3 kilograms to 5 kilograms per square centimeter. Compression pressure should be measured when the coolant temperature is at 75 to 85 degrees Celsius. Remove all injection nozzles and install the compression gauge adapter onto the nozzle fitting hole in order to mount a compression gauge for measurement. Confirm that the battery is fully charged. Pull the stop lever of the governor. Then set the injection pump to the non-injection mode. Crank the engine with the starter for about 10 seconds and read the compression gauge to find the pressure. At that time, confirm that nothing is abnormal by referring to the nominal value of 26 kilograms per square centimeter at the engine speed of 200 RPM. Repeat the compression pressure measurement for all cylinders in good order. Compression pressure of an engine just after overhaul sometimes shows a slightly high value because of insufficient running in operation. The indicated value also varies depending on the engine speed. Therefore, it is recommended to measure and record the number of revolutions of the engine during compression pressure measurement. Do you understand the service points of the 4D34 diesel engine? We are quite sure that prompt and proper service not only pleases your customers, but also brings prosperity to your service shop. We hope this video will be helpful to you in improving your shop's service skill. Thank you.